Good evening. How's everyone doing?
Afternoon, Mr. Chair.
Good evening.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Let me go ahead and call our special call meeting to order. And again, welcome everyone. Let me ask Ms. Olney for the roll call.
Yes, sir. Malinowski,
Here.
Pugh.
Here.
McBride,
Here.
Livingston,
Here.
Horatio,
Here.
Joe Walker, Barron,
Here.
Overture Walker, Mackey, English,
Present.
and Newton. We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. The chair entertains a motion for the adoption of the agenda.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
It's been moved and properly second.
Second.
Mrs. Olney, can you call the roll for the motion to adopt the agenda?
Mr. Chair, before you call that,
Mr. Malinowski, you recognize.
thank you, Mr. Chair. I just like for the record to state that I personally don't believe that this item is properly before us for the reasons that on March 17th of 2020, this council held their last in-person meeting. During the beginning of that meeting, you in the opening after the call to order indicated that this council would have to decide how future meetings would be held. We did have a meeting on March 31st, 2020, which was a special called meeting. And that was the first Zoom meeting that we had. I don't know how it came about, but we did not have any vote to determine that we would go into Zoom meetings. So the fact that we just arbitrarily stopped in-person meetings and we're now picking up where we left off, I don't think there's any need for this type of a meeting or a vote. And that's why I will be voting no on the entire matter. Thank you.
And I certainly appreciate that. And Ms. Malinowski, and because it's important for us to move forward with the meeting, and the fact that I did not have the chance to clearly check all the minutes to determine whether or not we actually took any action or not. So I thought it would be safer for us to move forward this particular way. But I certainly understand your concern.
Thank you. I got all those minutes here. I looked at them. Thank you.
And certainly share that. Any further discussion before the motion to adopt the agenda?
Yes,
If not,
Mr.
Ms.
Chair.
Hunt, can you call?
Mr. Chair.
Ms. McBride, you recognize.
Yes, I just want to state that I had questions regarding it, and the clerk of council did check, and they could not verify that we did take a position or vote on it. So I think that we're in order. That's my opinion. Just like the other gentleman have his opinion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If there's no further discussion as relates to the adoption of the agenda, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll for the adoption of the agenda.
Malinowski,
No.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Horatio,
Yes.
Joe Walker, Barron.
Yes.
Thank you. Barron,
Yes.
Overture
you.
Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton. Motion passes.
Thank you. The item before us is to consider resuming our in-person meetings starting effective July 13, 2021. Chair, entertain a motion regarding that particular item.
Mr. Chair.
And Ms. Barron, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to that this council will resume all regularly scheduled council meetings in person, allowing staff and other individuals to be able to convene at alternative locations to maximize our public participation.
You've heard the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it, sir.
I'll second the motion too, but I would like to split the question. There are two questions there. One of the questions is to resume the meetings, and the other question is to look at alternative locations. I'd rather have a discussion about that first. We've done that in the past, and there's some concerns that I'd like to at least share before we decide to do that with this particular motion. So that's why I would like to split the question.
Mr. Chair.
Do you need a second on splitting the question?
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah. I'll second you divide the question.
Move proper second to divide the question. And I'll ask you, any questions about the motion to divide the question? If not, I ask Ms. Owens to call for the vote for the motion to divide the question.
Malinowski,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yeah, yes.
Teratio,
Yes.
Joe Walker,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
Overture Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton. Motion passes.
Okay, so the motion before us now is the motion to move to in-person meetings beginning July 1st. And then we'll follow with the second motion to the question that was split. So now I'll entertain a motion regarding the resuming of the in-person meetings starting July 13th. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, you have some hands.
I apologize. I'm on vacation and just couldn't see those hands. Thank you, Mr. Pugh, and then Ms. Mack.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just point of clarity for me. I think the councilwoman was saying alternate locations for staff, not alternate locations for us to have meetings.
Right, we'll get to vote on both of those. We'll vote on this one first, and then after this motion, then we'll vote on the motion regarding the alternate locations.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Mack, you recognize.
Oh, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. I thought we were in discussion, so I'm still waiting for, I guess, a motion, a second before I go into discussion.
Okay, and again, we're looking for a motion for regarding the resuming of in-person meetings. Did I get a motion for that one?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion.
It's to move for us to resume in-person meetings effective July 13th. Is there a second? The chair will second that motion.
Second.
That motion moved and properly second. Any discussion reference that motion?
Mr. Chair.
You recognize?
Ms. Mackey.
Yes, you recognize the thing.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that with this motion that I'm on the same page, I guess, of the maker of the motion, is that we are moving forward with the plan that was presented in the coronavirus ad hoc committee that the administrator has already developed and presented. Is that correct?
Mrs.
Yes,
Barron,
that's correct.
Thank you. That's correct. And the second of the motion intended to be that way too.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. English and then Ms. McBride, I think it was.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question regarding safety and the number of persons throughout the state that are not vaccinated. Currently, I did my research and Richland County is only 42%. So I'm looking at safety. I'm looking at a lot of things, but that's a huge concern for me, as well as being able to access the staff. But that's just big, only because those persons with a disability are at a higher risk if contracting the virus for being severely ill. And I'm one of those people. So I will advocate for that on every measure. And I need to make sure that all of those things are in place. And so I needed to share that. But right now, the 13th is next week. So we need to make sure that all those safety protocols are in place. So thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I think Ms. McBride, did you want to be recognized?
Yes, Mr. Chair, the Coronavirus Ad Hoc Committee, I don't know if all council members were in attendance to that committee, and I'm also not sure about the full report out. So I do agree with the motion to move forward I agree with the motion to move forward on July 13th, but I don't know whether we can say it based on all the circumstances or other implications from the Coronavirus Ad Hoc Committee when I don't recall it being presented. So that's my concern.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Barron, you recognize?
Yes, I just wanted to speak to Ms. McBride's point. There was, Mr. Brown has reported out that the plan was for us as moving forward in for July 13th. But if I may, Mr. Chair, just give some updates because obviously there are some concerns that need to be addressed, and I'll briefly go to add anything. And I see that Mr. Pruitt is here as well. But to put the minds at ease, I'm not sure many people have visited the chambers lately, but the chambers have been outfitted with, I don't even know if they've been to protect staff, council members, as well as anyone speaking from the podium with, they have barriers around them. Council members not only have barriers in front of them, but they also have them to the sides of them. The length of the chambers, which would be split in half. And that was the reason for my making a motion initially to discuss making sure that staff could have an alternative location to be able to remotely be, so that we can maximize the opportunity for the participants from the community. Mr. Brown, if there's anything that I missed or you would like to add.
You did.
Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair, do I still have the floor?
Go ahead, if you have a question, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that Mr. Brown might be able to tell us exactly what he's done. I have visited the chambers, and it would be good for those who have not to know what's in place, as well as where constituents would be able to, how they would be able to participate, if Mr. Brown could give us that update.
Thank you. I'll hear from Mr. Brown and then Mr. Malinowski.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. In support of the information that Councilmember Barron just shared, the chamber is outfitted to address all three tiers of personnel who will be entering the chamber. So first, you would still have to go through a temperature screening to enter to the facility. So all members would have to do that. Also, not necessarily specific to COVID-19, but entering to the building as a whole, there would not only be folks entering to the council chambers who go through a security protocol, but all members entering the county facilities go through a security protocol at this time. Once you're inside the chamber will have already been cleaned using the Microban 24 product that the staff has. The chamber will have already been exposed to the electrostatic spray mechanism that we use to also sanitize the environment. That's all the surfaces there, including the seating. So whether that's council seating, staff seating, or community member seating, that will be included in that. In addition to the regular hand sanitizer that's throughout the facility, that will be in there. You will see that the seats have big stickers on them noting limited seating capacity. So the staff has also limited to the capacity to roughly 61 individuals who can attend in person. So that's spread out throughout the council chambers. In addition to that, you have the opportunity for individuals to have their faces covered at all times. It is a requirement because you are in an enclosed space and you will be in there for greater than 15 minutes. All persons will have to have a face covering that includes masks or other face shields. For members of council and staff, you certainly can wear your mask and have the protective shielding in front of you. But to Ms. Barron's point, council members don't have to have on a mask, but they will be guarded on all sides, front and both sides. Any speaker that's at the podium, they also will be guarded on all sides, as well as staff sitting in front of the council. But all members that are attending in person will be required to have a face covering. Does not mean a mask, but it does mean something covering your face. There could be a shield going down from your eyes to cover your mouth and nose, or it could come up from your neck to cover your mouth and nose, or you could be sitting behind one of the barriers that we've described for council or staff or people speaking at the podium. All of those are things that we have in place today. So if council chooses to go in session on the 13th, those are already there. In addition to that, we are also working to have a hybrid approach, which will allow citizens to participate in person or potentially virtual. We are testing that product out, and hopefully I'll be able to have a answer for you 100% on that by the end of this week. But that will also allow access to citizens who are unable to attend in person for whatever reason, and potentially council as well.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. McBride,
yes, can I ask Mr. Brown a question, please, sir?
go ahead, please.
Mr. Brown, what about if council members cannot attend? Will we still be able to Zoom in?
Yes, ma'am. Hopefully the equipment that we have purchased and that is being installed by our IT department and as well as contractors, we have a solution that we have in place that we believe will be ready as early as your July 13th meeting. And then we have a permanent solution that'll be available after that. But the plan is to expand access to county meetings for both council as well as the general public. So the short answer is yes, Ms. McBride. If you did not want to participate physically, then we're hoping to have a approach available that you could participate remotely as a council member or as a member of the community. Or I should say, and as a member of the community.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Not that if a council member was out of town and couldn't participate, that's why I was asking the question, as well as those who did not feel safe. Thank you.
Ms. Malinak, your hand was up earlier. Did you remove it?
I took it down, but I still have a question.
Malinak didn't walk. Open to walking.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Based on Mr. Brown actually answered my question, but based on this last question by Ms. McBride, that's a decision council has to make, not Mr. Brown, if Zoom attendance will be allowed based on our rules. We would have to decide whether or not we are going to forego the rules. Unless it's a special call meeting, we're not allowed to call in. So if we're going back to in-person meetings, if we're going back to the old way of doing business, then we need to decide whether or not we're going to allow call in and how we're going to do it as well before we just say, yes, we will. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. McBride, you recognize?
Yes, we've had in-call meetings before by telephone. So I don't know. I'm not sure how that happened, but we've had several.
Well, I'd like to know when, because the only in-call meetings that are allowed, and I'm going pre-Zoom, would have been special called. And those rules state that you still have to have at least 5 council members present.
And that is probably what Mr. McBride is referring to.
Well, but you may call them a special call, but I know that we've had in-call meetings before. I mean, council members calling in.
That's correct,
But
Ms. McBride.
I understand. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Overton Walker?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And perhaps Mr. Malinowski and Ms. McBride may have addressed this already, but I have 2 questions. First one for Mr. Brown, then a question for you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Brown, so your plan, the plan, I guess, that we're voting on, but this plan not only is it just for not simply to return to in-person meetings, but also to allow the public as well as council members the option of attending council meetings virtually?
Yes, sir. I would say my plan anticipates the resource, adding a resource that the county did not previously had, Mr. Overton Walker, so that council members and or the public will have that as a resource that they could do that, sir. It was not to step in line where the council makes that decision, but it was to provide a resource that you have that capability to do. And so you now have that resource.
Okay, and Mr. Chair, my question is to, or perhaps to the maker of the motion, and that is the motion simply to go back to full on in-person meetings, or is the motion to approve the plan as presented by the administrator, which sounds like to me would include the option for the public as well as council members to attend meetings virtually. So can I get some clarity on what the motion is?
Yes, I thought the motion was just to resume the meetings. But if the maker of the motion want to include that in the motion, then that can be included in the motion. But that is what I thought the intent was. But I will allow the maker of the motion to speak too.
My intent was to resume in-person meetings with the capabilities of the public to have patients to be able to call in and to participate in the meetings.
Okay. Well, would the maker of the motion be open to an amendment to the motion to allow council members to attend meetings virtually upon returning to, I guess, these in-person meetings?
Well, I don't think that I'm able to speak to that, given what Mr. Malinowski has stated earlier, based upon our rules. But I do see her hand up, and maybe she could speak to that more than I could.
Mr. Chair, may I be recognized?
Yes.
Yes, I was just going to say that I agree with Mr. Malinowski that before you definitively vote on whether that action should be taken, whether council can be part of a meeting when they're not in person, fully in person, you're going to need to address that in the rules, because right now it has to be a special call for that to happen. So you're going to need to somehow address that.
Mr. Walker, you still have the floor.
Oh, take my hand down. Well, actually, Mr. Chair, I guess I have a question then for Ms. McLean. So Ms. McLean, so are you saying that in order for this council to address the issue of having, I guess, allowing council members to attend meetings virtually upon a return to in-person meetings, we first have to vote to return in person first? And then upon having that vote, we get to have a vote on whether or not council members can attend virtually?
I think they need to be separate things. And if you look at your rules, I believe to vote on an actual rule change, you have to have that on an agenda and everybody has to have notice of that before you can actually do that. So I'm not even sure it would be appropriate for this meeting. I have to check your rules quickly, but okay. I do think they need to be separate things. Yes, sir.
I don't
think it matters which order.
Thank you, Ms. McLean.
Okay, and so what's before us then? It just simply the motion to move the in-person meetings on July 13th. That is what's before us. Any further discussion?
Ms. Newton has her hand up, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, Ms. Newton. Mr. Good, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is just a quick rules question. And if we need to take it separately, that's fine. I do understand that our rules have outlined provisions for council members attending remotely and when they can attend remotely. I guess my question was how it applied in this case, as we are currently all meeting remotely. And so the reasons that council members wouldn't attend, I was presuming would be for safety concerns. So I guess I was wondering if whatever allowed us to meet by Zoom now would also extend with the return on July 13th, if that question makes sense.
Well, it's an interesting question. What allowed you to meet via Zoom was basically just circumstances, and your rules were never addressed. However, you can make an argument that almost every meeting is a special called meeting if you have some special circumstance around it. It's not in the building, it's not this. So you might have, technically speaking, had a special called every time. I think that essentially what you put in were some emergency provisions. The FOIA allows you to meet remotely. I believe the Supreme Court put out an order allowing it. So I think we sort of bypassed your normal rules. But in a typical situation, if you're talking about going back to a regular course of business, as much as possible, I think you're going to at least need to address it. And I'm not saying it isn't possible. I just think we probably need to address it so we know exactly what the parameters are. There are some good and bad points about having the council members having the ability to call in and not be in person. It's some issues regarding attorney-client privilege on my end and what that looks like. Things we couldn't avoid during this time frame that you probably can avoid during any kind of normal period. But just something I think you should likely address. And there are ways around it. And obviously the rule can be changed to say whatever you need it to say. It's where we are right this second, I think.
Thank you.
Mr. Mount, you recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just also add to what Attorney McLean said, that what allowed us to meet is there were no in-person meetings whatsoever. We had to meet by Zoom. Nobody had the choice. But if we go back to in-person, that's when we have to address what we're going to do if we suspend rules, if we change rules. And we'll have to do it, I would say, as Ms. McLean says, at a council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? And then again, if there's no further questions, I'm going to call for the vote for the motion to resume in-person meetings on July 13, 2021. Mrs. Owens, can you call the roll for the motion?
Yes, sir.
Chair, I think Ms. English. So Ms.
I'm
English
sorry.
has her hand up.
Ms. English, you may go ahead, please.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. So I want to be clear. In order, and please, Ms. McLean, please correct me if I'm wrong. So in order for us to vote on how, it has to go on the agenda for 7 days, and then we decide how. Is that the correct procedure right now?
The only thing that I was talking about specifically was the part about whether council can participate via Zoom. That portion needs to be on a council agenda ahead of time, according to your rules. So you can amend that rule if you needed to. You could vote on the other portions that Ms. Barron spoke about citizens, about staff, anything like that. The only portion that I think has to be separated out or should be separated out is about council members participating via Zoom. And that can be on your next meeting agenda. I mean, it just is something that has to be done ahead of time.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Quite welcome. Ms. Mackey, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to be clear because we've gone back and forth. And so the current motion is stating to go back to in-person meetings starting July 13th. And is that following the guidelines and rollout plan that the administrator provided? Is that what we're saying? Or is this just, we're going back to in-person meetings and we're not including that we're going to follow the plan that has been developed that includes safety precautions?
I think it will include safety precautions.
Forgiven.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Barron, you recognize.
as the maker of the motion, it is to follow for us and present it to us. So as we return back to council, we will be following the guidelines that he briefly described earlier, as well as all the details in the plan that he provided to us some weeks ago.
And that is the safety issues.
And so council meetings are not excluded from the plan that the administrator has in place.
Any further discussion? If not, I'll ask Ms. Only to call for the vote for the question.
Malinowski,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Horatio,
Yes.
Joe Walker,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
Overture Walker,
No.
Mackey,
Yes.
English,
No.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. And if you may recall, we split the question and I made that motion to split the question.
Mr. Chair, I move to reconsider the previous item.
I'll take that motion for reconsideration. Moving
Thank you.
proper for reconsideration. Mrs. Arnold, can you call the roll for the motion of reconsideration for the previous item?
Malinowski,
No.
Pugh,
No.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
No.
Horatio, Joe Walker,
No.
Barron,
No.
Overture Walker,
Yes.
Mackey, English,
Yes.
Newton.
No.
Motion fails.
Thank you. And again,
Ms.
what's before
Only,
us now?
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I
Yes, ma'am.
was a no. I think I was having mic issues. That was
Okay,
a no.
yes, ma'am, I've got you.
Sorry about that. Okay.
Let me quickly state my reason for splitting the question. And the main reason was I wasn't sure that part of the question was proper before us because the agenda item was specifically to resume the meeting of July 13th. And it did not include anything beyond that. So that's why I wanted to split the question at that particular point. So the question is before us now had to do with whether or not we're going to have meetings per the committee report regarding alternative locations for meetings is what's before us now. So the chair would entertain a motion regarding that item.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
based on what you just stated, could we get Attorney McLean to advise us if that is proper before us or not?
Chair, before that, I think there's some confusion about what I was stating.
You look ahead and clarify, Ms. Barron.
Yeah, what I was stating was to allow staff the opportunity so that they would to either Zoom in from their offices or alternative locations so that it would free up space in the chamber. Because as you see here, we have all the directors on, and if everyone shows up in the chamber and if we're half capacity, that does the opportunity for true public engagement. So that's what I was speaking of, not what was presented in the committee meeting where we were talking about hosting our meetings at different locations.
Can we just instruct the administrator to make? Can we just instruct the administrator to make those decisions regarding his staff in terms of who needs to be where, who needs to be in person, who needs to be online, or whatever? We can just allow the administrator to make those decisions for his staff.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask for.
Yeah, I think that's his responsibility, not ours.
And he did in the plan that he presented.
So we'll just let him
Well,
move forward with his plan, I think.
That's right. We don't need to take it up.
Agreed. Move to adjourn.
Any further questions reference this item? So it will go forward, the point I'm making. That doesn't prohibit it from going forward. It's just that doesn't require action since it's an administrative plan. Any further discussion on that matter? If not, then the next item, of course, is adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
It's moving proper second for adjournment. Mrs. Owner, can you call the roll for the motion to adjourn?
Malinowski,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Horatio, Joe Walker,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
Overture Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
I want you all to know that y'all do have me in a little bit of trouble. I'm on vacation with my grandboys, and I told this one to take about 5 or 10 minutes. And so they're rolling their eyes at me and doing all kinds of things. So y'all owe me. Meeting's adjourned.
So move, sir.